What's up, guys? My name is Chris Thomas. I am the host of We All Have It podcast, and today we have a special guest. His name is Layne Mayerstein. He is an absolute stud. He is the team leader of the only scout team in the entire nation for United States Air Force, Special Warfare Squadron. He is an EOD tech. He is a family man. He is a Spartan racer. He is a 40-year-old fitness extraordinaire. He's been everywhere. People know him. He's been on the Spartan TV series. Man, I could just go down the list with you, honestly. And he's humble. That's why he's shaking his head like that. He's like, he asked me not to say that, but too bad. He's not the host here. I'm a U.S. Air Force pararescueman, and this podcast specifically is to find out how someone who is ordinary know his path, his decisions, and so on through his life to make him extraordinary. How did you become extraordinary? We're going to dive into his mindset. Guys, get a notebook out, get a pen, take some notes, because this guy's going to teach you some stuff. So, thank you for coming on the show. He's actually our first guy on the show. This is going to grow significantly over time. So, a good way to start off with a bang. EOD. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it is pretty good.
Yeah. So, who are you? Where are you from? Where were you born? And tell me about yourself.
Awesome. So, Layne Mayerstein. I told everybody I was 40, thanks. Never tell anybody girl's age, but
Yes.
I was born in Alabama. I was issued to my father. He was a radar nav on a B-52, so we were actually on Maxwell Air Force Base when I was born. But been all over the place. My father being in the Air Force kind of shaped my desire to enter, to serve, and it basically took me somewhat down that pathway. And everything I've done to this point really just has been a product of what I've been able to see, the places I've been able to go. I lived on Guam for 6 years.
How was that?
That was phenomenal. As a kid, it was great. A lot of adults go there and they get island fever, but for me, 6 years on an island was amazing.
It's funny because I always ask this question, have you ever climbed any trees? And I'm sure in Guam there's tons of vines and trees to climb.
There were some trees, but yeah, we used to climb trees. There, I don't know, the palm trees. Quite a few of them were leaning and messed up, and
Yeah.
we would try to see who could get the highest on those, because palm trees kind of hard to climb. So the group of us would always try to get up that tree and see who could get the highest, the fastest, and I've always been somewhat competitive.
All right, so since you were born as a kid, you were competitive, so it's almost like maybe a little intrinsic in your DNA.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
So you have a family.
Yep.
Tell me about your family. Tell me about, you have a couple daughters that are also studs. Don't let them be humble here.
Yeah, so 2 daughters, a 9-year-old that just qualified for Spartan Kids Worlds. We're going to take her down in December, and she's going to be running down there. She's been training like a maniac because she really wants to be on the podium again. I guess she got her first taste of the podium, got second in her second competitive race, second or third competitive race. So she's dying to get back on the podium. So we've been working out. She just did a workout with her mother. They ran 6 miles and did a TRX finisher, which I thought was pretty funny. I love that little system. I think it's cool, yeah.
So I want to point this out, guys. If I were to ask you, say, hey, is your daughter just intrinsically motivated, or does the influence of her surroundings, her experiences, does that play an effect on the way she pushes herself? Like she didn't just wake up and go, I want to run 6 miles and be a Spartan racer. I would say that there's a huge influence between you and your wife on, hey, you're not going to quit, you're going to push. Yeah. Explain that a little bit.
So when Alethea was born, we were down at Navarre. I was stationed at Nav School EOD. I was an instructor, and I would teach all of the Olympic lifting when guys would come into that phase of the program. Worked on the program with Ben Gleason to get it going. We ended up having a pretty comprehensive program down there, and I would do all of the Olympic lifting with those guys. So my wife would meet me at the gym after, because we had our own gym down there. She would meet me with Alethea and Lethe would just be around all the guys lifting. We'd have metal music playing, and you'd hear the barbells dropping because we're doing Olympic lifting, and we would we'd do CrossFit sometimes, because most of the guys love CrossFit.
Yeah, good functional fitness.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
And it was, I was there from 2010 to 2014, so it was just like this hardcore group of dudes that just really were into fitness. Most of the fitness we did was more traditional, more like functional.
Yeah.
So it incorporated a lot of the movements and techniques that we did in CrossFit anyway. But anyway, so Lethe would be there. She'd be hearing all that stuff. We'd take her out to triathlons. I would run with her in the stroller. My wife would run with her in the stroller. We would, like she would swim, and then I would go while we're waiting with Alethea, or just take turns. And
when he says stroller, he just showed me a picture. He had like a 50-pound bag on his shoulders. He had a 30-pound weight vest, and he ran a 5K while pushing his daughter in the stroller. So when he says stroller, that's what he really means, not just a regular stroller.
I wasn't really running. I was like.
It's still a 5K.
I was like walk shuffling.
Whatever how much weight that is.
Yeah, when I carry weight, I kind of slow down. But so Alethea was always around the gym. She was always around us competing. I did quite a few events when she was younger. Jess was doing a decent number of like runs and things when Alethea was younger. I did the Alpha Warrior. It's like a Ninja Warrior-esque competition. So imagine you do an obstacle and then you do deadlift. You do an obstacle and then you do a ski or a row or a bike or something like that.
Endurance, power, strength, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, it's absolutely brutal. So my daughter was there. So Alethea was there when I won in Korea, and that's one of those times where I really felt good because my daughter was old enough to understand, and she, and Jess was pregnant with Jupiter, so we were.
She gets at that age where she starts to be aware
of
her own emotions and how she can manipulate those and push. Yeah.
When we were, when I was competing, and I just had that moment where I could see that my daughter was proud, and it just really made me feel good. I've never, anytime I've ever done a competition or entered into anything, it's never really been, I want to compete and I want to just crush. I've always done things with a little bit of energy being held back, just because the entire time I've been in, it's always been about the mission. It's always been about the guys around you and getting that mission done. And if I put myself at risk and I stop myself somehow, or I injure myself, I fall apart because I'm not capable of going after I push myself to that point where I break, then I'm putting the mission at risk. So it was hard for me to transition, but because of my daughter, I've been able to push myself harder. The workouts that I do with her, I tend to push myself harder than I would ever push myself. And it's really weird because I see her doing that, the look of determination I saw on her face. I think it was the first competitive race she did. It was something else. I've never seen the look of determination on anybody's face like that.
That's amazing.
She just like blanked out.
So it almost like her purpose kind of formed your purpose now of like when you push, it's a little bit different than when you're single and so on, when you have a family behind you that you're having to support and raise really.
Yeah, it's like that competitiveness, the lay it all out there. Yeah. I can now, and this has been recent, even after the Spartan Games, I went out there. I learned a lot from the guys and girls out there. Like, they're all amazing athletes, and being around them was extremely humbling. Day one was a difficult day for me, just because I was sitting out there and I was around all these just awesome athletes, and I was like, man, this is great. Just soaking it all in, talking to everybody, and I mean, you know me, I'm a social butterfly, so I like talking to people, and I was out for like 3.5 hours just getting iced while I was standing waiting to do that first event. And Mac and I ended up going last, and I if you watch it, you can actually see like I doing the deadlifts, and I pretty much just.
And this is the Spartan Races?
This is the Spartan Games.
So can you explain to everyone I know you're a Spartan athlete. He was on season 2. If you guys want to check it out, it's pretty awesome. I believe you're the only Air Force Special Warfare rep, which is really awesome. Great for the community. Yeah, tell me about the Spartan Games. Tell me about your involvement and what you're doing now with it and your mindset with that.
Yeah, so the Spartan Games was essentially it was an event. It was season 2. Season 1 we had Matt on there, a SEER specialist, and he was pretty awesome. Matt has that never quit, I can continue forever kind of attitude. But with the Spartan Games is you take lead athletes from all these different sports, mostly endurance sports. There were some CrossFitters there. Christian Harris and Meg Reardon were there, and I was a major fanboy with them. Yeah, and the events they're geared more towards showing really what Spartan's family of brands has, and we did bike similar to a Laruda. We did some fun like CrossFitish type stuff, some lifting, like we had these D-balls, started at, man, I want to say it was like 70 pounds.
It's just a
100
big
pounds,
ball
150 pounds, yeah.
of heavy weight.
So it's like a 14-inch ball, rubber coated, and we were just doing ground to over shoulder and trying to do it as fast as you could in a minute. So there was that. There was obviously there was going to be a Spartan race. So we had 1K loops, and we did a bunch of obstacles. I'm going to call them obstacle, because there's like obstacle. It's more like Ninja Warrior. I don't know if you can put that on the air.
Yeah. No, I think that's a term that everyone uses.
No, it's a term I use.
Fair enough. We'll see.
So we did that obstacle course event, and it ended up being around 3K, so it was 3 1K loops, and that we wrestled. I got to wrestle Hunter, which I was really happy about. I saw season 1 where they wrestled, and I was like, man, if I
Hunter's the
Hunter McIntyre.
So he's the guy that is
High
off
Rocks
of
champ.
that guy.
Broken Skull Ranch.
He was on Broken Skull Ranch.
Yeah.
If you guys remember, he was the champ that no one could beat. That was like much smaller than everyone. If you guys get a chance,
Yeah,
check
he's
it
a
out.
beast. So I wanted to wrestle Hunter, and I got the opportunity. We actually talked about it beforehand. Neither one of us was wanting to do anything where I was more worried about injuring him.
But you were a wrestler in high school.
Yeah, I mean, but I was never good.
Again, humble.
No, I mean, I really was not
This
good.
really wasn't good.
I ran track, and I played football. I was much better at track and football.
When we talk about the Spartan races, I know that you were talking not too long ago about a 30-mile race. Mm-hmm. So it's a 30-mile race. Think about it. Some people don't even want to walk 30 miles in a couple days, accumulated time. All right, but you are doing obstacles for how long does that last? Like, what's the time that it's like 15 hours more or less?
No. The goal is to be. So Mark Gaudette is a monster. He's actually an Army Ranger, but Mark Gaudette is the guy right now, like the guy to beat, and he's running them in under 6 hours. He's just a monster.
So I was a little off, but
He's ridiculous.
6 hours straight
Yeah.
of doing obstacles over 30 miles. And when you do that, like, what's your mindset? What are you thinking? Let's say you get to 10 miles, 15 miles, you're smoked. What do you think in your head? Like, what is it that just says, no, I got to keep going. I can't quit right now.
I'm usually just hungry and looking around.
So if the animalistic, comes out.
I don't do them in 6 hours, but I'm working to get to the point where I'm a lot closer to where Mark is. One of the things that I definitely have that's playing against me is a little bit more mass, because I'm a decent bit larger than a lot of other guys.
Denser but bigger, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit bigger than a lot of the guys shorter but bigger. So shorter,
yeah,
plays against me. But I'm working to get faster at that distance. So eventually, hopefully, I'll be at a point where I'm super competitive at the ultra distance. At the shorter distances, like the beast, which is a half marathon, I I'm just not there. And the super, which is a 10K, I really need to get my speed up. And then the 5K, you could be you could be a 20-minute runner, which like I'm right about there now. So a 20-minute 5K with the obstacles, it adds a decent amount. So if you're like VJ is like a 15, 16-minute guy, and he's just a monster. So going through the obstacles, that dude just like his thing. He is fast, but he really crushes obstacles, and it's cool to see. So being fast isn't enough.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I'm really good on obstacles. So it's like me being able to go into the obstacle and immediately come out of it and continue really works to my advantage.
That's really awesome. So we've seen kind of from the beginning, grew up around an environment where he can kind of thrive and be a kid. He played, his track. He's playing football, competitive, doing Spartan races, doing other types of things. How does that intermingle with your ability to be an EOD tech? So just again, he's an EOD tech. He's an EOD master, which is the highest. It is the highest.
Yeah, master badge.
Master badge
Yeah.
as an EOD, which is a great feat. And then also, he is the team leader of the scout team. So we can talk about training, we talk this, but I want to talk about your job as an EOD, maybe a couple things you've done mission-wise as an EOD. Because a lot of people don't know about EOD. All you think, hey, let's just like play with some wires and disarm a bomb. But there's a lot of missions. There's actually 9 mission sets. And some of them are really, really cool. I'll tell you, if I wasn't a PJ, we've talked about this before, I would definitely go EOD. And tell me a little bit about those mission sets, some of the cool ones about Secret Service, and maybe the body recovery out in Vietnam. And then kind of tell me about the job a little bit, and then maybe a couple missions.
Yeah. So my favorite mission sets, obviously, number one's IED, improvised explosive devices. First, just to get into it, the Air Force. So all 4 service, well, I shouldn't say all 4 services. The Navy, Army, Marine Corps, and Air Force all have explosive arms disposal, and we all go to a naval school, NAV school EOD.
Together.
Is what we call it, together. And we have instructors from all 4 services. We have 102 nations that go to our school. And the Air Force, the primary mission of the Air Force is to fly, fight, and win. So with Air Force EOD, our main priorities, so like even though we have other priorities, our main priorities are dealing with aircraft airbase, and then aircraft airfield, and then the airbase. If we can't fly aircraft, then the Air Force is not doing its job. So as an EOD tech, I need to make sure, and my team, we need to make sure that the aircraft is able to fly by dealing with anything that's on aircraft, dealing with explosive components of the aircraft. So if you didn't know, there are explosive components in some aircraft, and whatever's on the airfield. So if there's a drop munition, or let's say we get into a war, we get attacked, there's a bunch of stuff all over the airfield. We're responsible for clearing the airfield in a real expedient manner with minimum damage possible, so that the runway surface can get fixed by civil engineers, and then the aircraft can take off. But our goal is to not damage the airfield. So we do everything in our power to make sure that what we do, even if it's explosive, it doesn't create that much damage, if any at all.
And when you're wearing, let's talk about explosives, he talks about that part, but we're here at the CrossFit Games, which is pretty cool, and they brought a bomb suit. That thing was, how much does that weigh?
About 85 pounds for some of the older ones.
So 85 pounds, this thing's massive. There's a couple pictures of him out there, of him wearing this and checking out the streets. So imagine being in the middle of Afghanistan, you get a call and you're having to go out there in this bomb suit, 85 pounds, you're sweating, it's hot. You'll also have the anxiety or even pressure of actually dealing with the actual ordnance. And being in shape and being fit is definitely going to come into play in that situation. So with that being said, like obviously you've done some missions and potentially maybe never wearing that bomb suit. I think have
No,
you ever?
I've worn it. Yeah, I've worn it in Iraq. I've worn it in Afghanistan.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, so one of the things that I like to talk about is pride when it comes to that. And there's one scenario in particular where maybe I was a little bit prideful, or I was just wanting to get the job done. But we were out in an area that was kind of hot at the time. I won't say where it is because I don't know if I can actually talk about where it was. So we were in an area that was kind of hot at the time. We had quite a bit of we had quite a bit of IEDs, number of dudes getting hit, and was doing conventional support for infantry at the time. And it was it was just this call out that we went to. It was a command wire IED, and we were told it was from what they saw, it looked like it was a daisy chain. Daisy chain is just ordnance where you have multiple pieces of ordnance or multiple main charges that are linked together by deck cord. So it basically spreads out the hate and discontent that
And
that
det
thing
cord
can
is
bring.
detonation cord.
Detonating cords, like
Okay.
it's like explosive filled rope essentially.
Wow.
So they had they called it out as a daisy chain. So we went out there and started taking a look, and we did some procedures to control the scene. Pushed out the infantry unit, and we were all on foot because it was we couldn't drive to some of these spots. And the intent was to get guys while they were dismounted and walking through the area. But set up, had a pretty good site where we could set up, have eyes on, be able to use hand signals to communicate between my team members and myself while I was operating until I got through this tree line that obscured everything.
And let me stop you there, guys. Just put this in perspective. You talk about real heroes, those frontline guys, those Army 18, 19-year-old kids out there, and these Marines out there, and it also right next to them is Air Force EOD, and these people are calling, hey, we need to go do this thing. Can you go in there first and make sure everything's cleared? And we'd always say that, is the zone clear? Is it cleared? And these guys are going in there risking their lives for you or whoever you are to go out there and hack the mission. So sorry, continue.
So set up, I went over and I started taking so we normally when we go into an environment, I'm always talking with my team, and my team is huge when it comes to planning. So we'll analyze, we'll plan, then we'll execute. So we're taking a look, we do the analysis, figure out what's going on based upon what we were told, what we see, and what's around us. Then we come up with a plan. So the plan really was to go down, since we really couldn't see much. Go down in the bomb suit. I took a bang stick and a mine detector. And
what's a bang stick?
It's just a bang stick is just a flexible stick
That you can like touch stuff.
Yeah, it extends. Ours I think was like, it doesn't matter the length of it. I probably shouldn't say either. So it's an extendable pole that I can use to manipulate and or place things.
Nice.
So the plan was to go down there, take a look, figure out what was going on, and I took in some explosives just to disrupt if I needed to, but I also had it set up so that I could switch real quick, and if I could do a det, I would just place the charges, and then I'd go from there. Went down, broke through the tree line, realized I lost viz, and I was like, okay, my team doesn't have visibility on me, I don't have visibility on them, so I would pop out, I would wave my hand, make sure that they were okay, and when they would they'd fire back okay, I'd be like, okay, cool. So I went in, observed. I had a camera as well, took some photos. Saw that there were some munitions that had shape charges. Shape charge is it was ordnance. So they used ordnance with some homemade explosives stuffed in the back with det cord going into the back of some of these munitions, and so I took pictures of them. Realized that some of them had shape charges, and they were pointed directly at my team. So I immediately went back, talked about it, and had them pull off. But so a shape charge, there's two different types. EFP, explosively formed penetrator, which I'm sure quite a few people have heard of. You basically have a platter or a disc, think like a manhole cover, but smaller, with explosives behind it, and it ends up making something that goes at a really high rate of speed. And because it's moving so fast, the kinetic energy can put it through stuff. Or like a conical charge. And those conical charges, the way they work, explosives will start from the back, and you have these intersecting blast waves. As they connect, they create what's called it's like a Mach stem, but they come together and create more energy that's focused in the center, and it goes out much faster, and that's actually what cuts through. There's like this comet, and it cuts through armor. So when you think about shape charges, RPG, like a PG7, something like that, those have those shape charges in them, and the long nose of it is what provides the standoff, so that when it detonates, it's the optimum distance for that comet to cut through armor. So those things were sitting out there.
My head's going to explode because it's just crazy how many. It kind of shows the fight that we were in Afghanistan and Iraq. These people over there, they're not a bunch of idiots.
No,
they're running around. They're pretty smart. They know what they're doing, and
we did quite a bit. They did quite a bit of learning from what occurred in Iraq, and I know that Al Qaeda and Taliban were absolutely communicating. Other terrorist organizations were communicating as well and doing some of the training. So anyway, they moved. We ended up dealing with, so I ended up dealing with the ordnance from in a semi-remote way, where remote, you're completely away. It's like we use a robot. Semi-remote, we walk up, we do something, and then I can manipulate from a distance. So I was doing some semi-remote stuff, and ended up getting all the munitions that were in that daisy chain to a preferable setup, and placed HE on them, or high explosives on them, my high explosives for detonation. Popped out, and I was at the point I should have pulled out earlier, and this is where the pride thing comes in. I should have pulled out earlier, but like I was breathing so heavily. I mean, it was hot. It was like 120.
when you're in that bomb suit.
Yeah, it was like 120, 130. I've been in the bomb suit for like 30 minutes or so, 40 minutes, and I should have popped out. I should have sat for a second, and I should have had my team members sit there with me and just let me chill for a minute, and just extending the time, because we were controlling the scene and there was nothing pressing us. I was fine, and I was set up, so it was good. But I realized, I was like, man, I'm set up. I should have stopped 5-10 minutes earlier, but popped. Smoke, and so I started off the time fuse, and as I was coming out, I started to black out.
Oh wow!
And my team members, like, they came and got me, helped me back, and so we were close enough to each other as when my P2, my number 2 guy, but then my P3 came and helped out, so we were able to get back, and it was fine, but I put them at risk because I put myself at risk. So
Gotcha. So they're going out there.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, guys, and again, Layne's extremely humble. He says that they're in a non-pressing area, but you're thinking about an area that Al Qaeda or even ISIS or whoever, Taliban are out there. They've already been there. They set up bombs, so they know exactly where that's at. And there's always secondary. You could be messing with something here, and then potentially they know you're going to go there. So then the only route out is this. So they set you up there, And again, just to paint the picture how dangerous this, it's 120 degrees. He's in an 85-pound thick bomb suit. There's not ice cold water running through your veins in that point. And he has a mission right now that potentially will save, hundreds of lives or tons of lives, wherever it may be. I don't know how big this daisy chain is, but what's the capacity?
That right there, we would have taken out at least one, like the platoon.
A platoon, yeah. So you think about that daisy chain. Yeah. One explodes and boom, 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 boom. It's almost like Christmas lights in a sense.
We actually had one detonate on one of the platoons that were out. So they got it kind of hit home. Like these guys that were around us, they
already knew the potential.
Because their brother platoon had already been hit by one, so it was it was kind of a big thing.
So that's probably just one of his many missions. He's done a lot of stuff downrange, but just to keep the time short, I know that you were also involved in even seeing the significant event of President Trump
walking into North Korea.
Korea, he was there.
My team supported that event. So Air Force EOD, well, all four services EOD, we support United States Secret Service when the president, vice president, foreign heads of state go do anything outside the U.S. We also support when foreign dignitaries come in. The goal is to keep everyone safe, and we're absolutely adamant about keeping everybody safe. And there's no political whatever. Anybody comes in, they're not gonna have anything happen to them. So obviously, being explosive ordnance disposal, we deal with everything that's explosive. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for explosive items and things like that that are going to affect our protectees. So North Korea, the team was there. President Trump gets called over by Kim Jong-un and ends up walking across. And it's the most beautiful thing to see. The interaction between President Trump and Kim Jong-un is something that's just phenomenal.
And you got to see it real live in person. That's insane.
The other thing that came out of that was the repatriation. So EOD also does what's called a Defense Personnel Accounting Agency, and guys will go out to Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, North Korea, and recover remains from pilots or other people that are out there. And it's
so
not
for
just
families that have been trying to look for the remains of their ancestors or their great grandfather, and they go out there and they search for them and they find these remains and they bring them back home. How freaking awesome is that? That's awesome. And amazing.
It's not just Americans.
And that's one of your mission sets.
To go out there. So supporting that. It's just I guess it's somewhat of a subset because there's it's an event. It's like humanitarian demining.
Sure.
Humanitarian demining is another thing that EOD does, or foreign internal defense. It's another thing that EOD, all four services, will do. We teach from the Air Force perspective, so our goal is more along the aircraft, airfield, air base perspective. So that's what we typically focus on when we do the FID, the foreign internal defense. So repatriation occurred when coming out of that meeting, and we recovered 56 remains of UN personnel. So if most people didn't know, there were the Vietnam conflict, Vietnam War, was a UN action. So there was a lot more than just Americans out there, and we recover more than just Americans.
So they're not just doing Americans, bringing them home. They're bringing allies and so on that helped us out there, and they're bringing these remains home. They're finding out through possibly dental records and so on like that to find out.
You'll get osseous remains, or you'll get some of the, and which more often than not osseous bones. You won't necessarily have the material left over, so the scientists over at DPAA, they use it to identify, yes, it's human, or no, it's not. Mm-hmm. They can tell if it's male or female, and then it's all of the other clothing and things that are with that individual. Because if
Right
there's not
time,
enough,
right place, clothing.
yeah, time, place, clothing, personal effects,
And
that's
this
how
is
you
going to
can
bring
usually
them
tell.
home so that they can have most likely a proper burial for them, and even what we all look for in a situation like that as a family
Closure.
is closure, which is amazing. Man, that's awesome. So EOD, your fitness obviously comes into play. Right now, you are the team leader for the scout team, a special warfare 330th Squadron, recruiting squadron. Tell me how. I know I'm from a rescue.
The rescue squadron.
I'm from a rescue squadron. I always say
Rescue.
that. A
He
recruiting
rescues
squadron.
people.
Tell me how all of this comes together to where he's now preparing not only mindset, physical, emotional, spiritually. Just now we go out there, we're doing marketing events, but we also take a lot of time, especially him out in Colorado area. He's taking guys who want to be EOD, who want to be PJs, special reconnaissance, combat control, TAC P, SEER specialist, and he's molding these young guys who might not have a mentor. And what a great asset to have is Layne Mayerstein as your mentor. How is all of this together be able to have an influence on the youth that you're actually interacting with?
Yeah, actually, honestly, as things progress and as things change with the scout team and how we get aligned, it's going to be nice to have more time with the guys that are in my AO. But right now, I get touch with those dudes. I'm trying to get more of the guys that are going off to school into this development group, this mentorship chat that we have, where guys that are upperclassmen in EOD school are communicating all the way back to guys that are getting ready to ship. They're like within a week of shipping. So they communicate back and forth, and they talk about what to expect at basic, but it's more so, hey man, I forgot this. So if you need stuff like that, make sure you bring this. I do this. I wanted this, and I could have this. I didn't realize I could have this. So if you want, bring this. And then they talk about a bunch of other stuff. I have a very strict no academic dishonesty policy. So if anybody talks about a test at all, I'm going to shut down the page. I'm going to eliminate them from the career field, because we just can't have that. It's something that I will not.
And that was when you were an instructor at the.
No, this is what I have right now with,
now.
with guys going through. So
Just
there's
integrity and so on.
Yeah, so there's a group of dudes that are going through school. Multiple have graduated, and it's like since I came over to the 330th, multiple dudes have graduated, and they've passed on their knowledge. I pull them out.
I see what you're saying.
After they graduate.
Yeah.
So the goal is to have them develop the guys behind them, to develop the guys behind them, to develop the guys behind them.
So what he's talking about is this thing called a cone network. That's
Yeah.
what we call it. It's where students go into the pipeline. They have to take these multiple tests to be able to move on to the next phase. And sometimes there's going to be dishonesty when it comes to testing, like, hey, number 6 is this, or study this. Obviously, you can be broad, but when they start giving specific answers, it doesn't give justification to how smart you are when you're actually taking a test, and that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to prepare the best.
Yeah. It doesn't really help you in an EOD school, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
it's tough.
It doesn't
I know.
really help you. So the biggest thing that we do is we try to build people up physically, mentally, spiritually, and socially. And there's a way that I try to get guys to interact in the development pool. I try to get them to go out and see each other outside of development,
Creating a bond.
Because if you're hanging out, so the dudes that are going out for one of the SW contracts, if they're all together and they're hanging out, when they get into SWIC or they're over at ANS, and they're like, there's 2, 3, 4 of them, they're hanging out, or they're not hanging out. I mean, they're hanging out. They're gonna be pushed to a point where they're just sucking, and if they allow themselves to get inside their head, they're gonna go, okay, well, man, I don't know how much longer I can do this. But if they look over at each other and say, hey man, you remember you pooped your pants on top of the incline? Yeah, and then everybody starts giggling.
Yeah, and their mind just kind of goes somewhere else, and
go
you can
somewhere
forget
else.
about it.
Yeah, you get back to that. You get back to those events that you did back in Colorado. You get back to where you guys were climbing the incline together, and it was just funny.
It's
Better
funny
time.
because you relate to that. It's funny. A lot of people are like, "Oh, my best friend in high school," and you see once you get into these courses where you're getting a bunch of guys who are like-minded, and you create this bond through not even just being, talking, communicating, but through blood, sweat, and tears, like
Yeah.
legit blood, sweat, and tears. And I remember being on the pool deck, and things suck. I'm doing 10-ups, and all I had to do was look down at my buddy, and we look at each other, and there's no way I'm quitting on him. He's not quitting on me. We're not gonna let each other. We're holding each other accountable. And the more, like, I love that he's creating a bond outside of just these workouts that they might do a few times a week or even once a week, depending on the area you're in. And boom, so now you have this cohesive team that will not let each other quit on each other, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, and so so the goal is to get those guys together. The guys throughout EOD school, my goal is to have guys that are at different levels doing the same thing, because when they graduate from EOD school, they're going to spread to the 5 wins, 4 wins, and they're going to they're going to have that contact with one another, and they'll be able to see what's happening tactically. So if something changes tactically, that's awesome. This guy can grab onto it. As I say, the dude at Hill is doing something. Well, this guy over here at Osan is going to be able to say, hey, can you send me that? And then this guy at Osan is going to have it. Or the guy at Osan who's doing the airfield, the Raider, Rapid Airfield Damage Repair, he's going to be able to pass that stuff to his buddies that are at Luke, at Nellis, at Barksdale. So
Never stop learning.
Yeah, and it's the bro network, honestly. And if it's happening tactically, it's going to be a lot faster than if it goes up through the flight, and from the flight to the MAGCOM, and from the MAGCOM across to the other MAGCOM, and then down from there. Because like government stuff, the way the government works, everything works at the speed of how fast can you get it up, get it through the wickets, but by the time it goes up, it gets changed.
Yeah, I was about to say things change or whatever.
Personalities and everything else, and then it goes this way, it comes down, and then this guy gets it. He's like, what the heck is this? And then he ends up not using it because it's trash. So the guy that has it tactically, where let's say Osan has it right, and these guys over at Hill are like, man, we want that because we saw it when we were TDY out to Osan for one of the exercises.
Temporary duty, TDY.
Yeah, sorry. When we were out there for one of the exercises, we saw this. This is what was going on. We want this. It needs to not be filtered.
So you just go. You talked about the bro network or whatever, or we call it the cone network in our career fields. It's just the bond. So here, for example, like let's say he's at home. He lives in Colorado, and an EOD Air Force guy knocks on his door and is like, "Hey, man, all the hotels are filled right now. Can I stay at your house?"
Yeah.
It's not even. He might not even know the guy, and he's like, "Yeah, I got an extra room," and it's just like that. That's what's great about these career fields is we're such a small career field. All of us, all 6 of us, all 6 of our career fields. It's just such a bond that you can't get anywhere else. So if you guys are looking for teamwork, camaraderie, you're looking for someone to lean on. Because a lot of people, they didn't grow up having that.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I love about it. Layne and I might not see each other for 10 years, and we're going to pick up like we've been hanging out for a year straight every single time. And it's not just you and I, it's literally everyone in our career field.
Yeah.
So you're developing these guys physically. What are some certs that you have that make you, besides just being an athlete and just over time experience, because our job now is supplementing the T3I development world.
Yeah.
So if you guys don't know, if you sign up to do these jobs, special warfare, you're going to have more resources than any time in history. Like 2022 is the time to sign up and have a great chance of making it because, sorry, we have programs for you. We have diet plans. We have everything you want. And then as much as you want, we have a guy out in this area who's a supplement to T3I called the Scout Team. Mm-hmm. We have the knowledge of exactly what you need to do to get through these courses to the T. Plus, the T3i developers are all ex-operators from TACP to SEER, and they're phenomenal. They know exactly what to do. All we want you guys to do is have some of these attributes that we're looking for. We're looking for you to be coachable, trainable, a good teammate. We want you to do some problem solving. And, you know, that's another thing you guys need to realize, that this is not only just brawn, being strong and this and that. Oh, caveman. It's a lot of academics.
Yeah.
EOD is tons of academics. Like every single person in that career field is either a physical stud and has a master's degree or a bachelor's degree and super smart, and same with pararescue. Like almost all of us have degrees. We are just smart and strong guys that can think on their feet and so on. And that's what we're looking for. And if you're not that person, you can be molded and trainable.
Yeah.
Then you start listening to people who have done it before. Smart people learn from their mistakes. Geniuses learn from others, and so on. And but hey, right now we're going to wrap it up. We are at the CrossFit Games, so we're going to continue this at the CrossFit Games. So I appreciate you coming on for part 1, but we're just going to go right into part 2 when we get to the CrossFit Games. Layne, thank you so much for here at the hotel doing this podcast. Guys, as you can tell, it is a plethora of knowledge coming from this guy's mouth, and I'm learning a lot about him right now, just picking his brain. We're going to get right into another session here, but thanks, man. I appreciate it, and we'll see you here in a minute. All right, guys, we are back here. We're actually at the CrossFit Game. Just like I said before, we're going to switch from part 1 to part 2. Layne, thank you for coming out here as well. It's been a crazy weekend. We've met a lot of people, a lot of connections, and really just picking everyone's brain. And but back to Layne here, picking his brain. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more on the fitness part. The last thing we left off was how are we connecting with the guys, our candidates, pre-session, going into BMT, going into the pipeline. How are they training? But let's first I wanted to bring up was rucking. I think this is a big question that everyone asks, and you know, we've met some people out here and people that we support while we're preparing and what we suggest here. So the question we get is, if we know rucking is happening in the pipeline, how do we prepare for that? And what we're seeing right now is that there are younger guys who maybe weigh like 120 pounds, and they see a guy who weighs 185 pounds who's been working out for his entire life throw this 55-pound ruck on and start moving out, and he wants to compare to him, so he throws it on. So what do you think we should do just to incrementally, get a little bit better when it comes to that?
A lot of guys, they try to get into rucking before their bodies are prepared, and they can't even run 3 miles. So stepping up to the point where you're increasing your volume a little bit at a time, and getting to the point where you can run that 3 mile distance, you can run that 4 or 5 mile distance before you start rucking, because you gotta get your bones to densify. You have to get your feet, your
kind of like the
ready.
time under load thing.
Yeah, but you got to get your body ready for the impact that you're going to be taking with that ruck anyway. So if you're not running and getting the distance anyways, then I don't recommend you ruck anyhow.
Yeah.
And one of the things I absolutely do not recommend is running with weight, because the level of impact it puts on your body, the stress it puts on the body, and just the fact that if you're honestly, if you're running with weight, it's going to slow you down, and it's going to set you at a pace that's below where you want to be running anyways, because you get used to running with weight, you get used to running at that pace. Trying to speed yourself back up is going to be a lot more difficult.
So you're suggesting maybe like, hey, if you've never rucked before and you need to put some time under load, some little bit of weight on your say just walking with some little bit of weight. We have some examples here. So we'll start with this one.
Okay.
This is also by a company called GoRuck. We are not affiliated with them at all. They do not sponsor us, but that's something we want to push on. This is the fact that this is a perfect start to beginning to be good at rucking, because you're going to do a lot of that stuff. This is basically just a backpack with a holder for, I want to say this is about 25, 30 pounds, maybe even lighter.
I think we got the 30s, right?
The 30 pounds, and you can switch these out with 25 pounds, 20 pounds.
Yeah.
But these are perfect. You just start walking with this stuff. Get a couple miles in a week at least, maybe 2 times a week, and then you can move up to what he's got.
And even then, even with something like that, starting out with 15 pounds, or even before you get to that, walking up a hill, and practice walking up a hill and going at a pace that's a faster walking pace is even going to put it's going to put more stress on your body. You'll have that cardio component that's going to come into it as well, get your heart rate up. But walking at a ruck pace, because a ruck pace is more like that 3.5 to 4 mile an hour pace is what we're looking for.
Right, 15-minute walk or mile.
So being able to get to that point where you're working a lot harder and you're using nothing at first, but then you go to 15 pounds and maybe do a mile. Maybe the next time you do 2 miles. Then you add weight, go back to a mile. Then do 2 miles at that next weight, 3 miles, go back down to a mile, and just incrementally increase in an intelligent way. You progress distance, and then you add weight and drop the distance, and then you can progress through distance again, and that's going to give you a more sustainable way of increasing your ability, because you're not going to go immediately from doing nothing to 5 miles. It's just dumb. You're putting way too much stress on your body, and you may not be ready for it. But after that, moving to something like the ruck, and I think I got 60 pounds in here. It's the 2 30-pound plates.
2 30-pound.
But moving to something like this where you have that load, and it's got a carriage system on the inside where it's a lot higher.
Yeah, the load's up higher,
Yeah.
so it's a little bit better for your posture and for your back.
Well, it keeps you more upright. So if you think about when you squat, the weight's up high, so like you do a high bar squat, it's going to keep you more upright, and it'll keep you in more of a position where your body's going to work to its most capable. Biomechanics are going to be appropriate for what you're doing when you're more upright.
Perfect.
So using something like that is going to be good. But like even then, the biggest thing really is working on your cardio capability, your cardio capacity, and getting to the point where you're running greater distances before you start to get really into the rucking. Do not run with weight. Do not run with weight.
Do not run with weight.
Yeah, do not run with weight. And get to the point where you're extremely capable with the distance.
Yeah.
And then start adding weight. And even then, I would say ruck no more than once a week. And when you do it, be smart. 1 mile, 2 mile, 3 miles each, and do it on the same day each week. If you're going to be climbing up a mountain, you're going to be doing something like in Colorado, we have the Manitou Incline. If you're going to be climbing up the incline, don't immediately go to doing it with weight.
Exactly.
I was stupid the first time I did the incline. I just threw on weight. I'd been rucking for a while, so my ability was there, but I was unfamiliar with the terrain. So going and doing something that's unfamiliar is not necessarily a good thing either.
Yeah,
feel out
especially
the
just
terrain.
throwing weight on there the first time.
Yeah, exactly.
Get used to it.
Feel out the terrain, check it out, especially if it's just a training environment, and then increase weight incrementally, increase the distance incrementally, but flex the way you do things. If you're increasing the distance, decrease the load. If you increase the load, decrease the distance.
So he's saying here, you start to do these plans, no matter what it be, from watercon to rucking to running.
Yep.
Doesn't matter. There is a system to meet a goal, a structured system. So let's be smart about what we're doing when we're training for this, for the 3 months that we might be training for, even 6 months. Like, what are we doing? Like we were just talking about on the van on the way up here, is a guy like me, like I like to, let's say I'm on a running plan, I'll do 5 miles, and then the next day I'm like, okay, I only can do 2 miles today because I need to recover, and then I feel good, so then I just run 10 or 12, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my legs and stuff like that. So to caveat on that, I want to pick your brain. This guy's really, really smart with this. As you get older, as you can see, he's 40 years old, he's crushing it, he still acts like he's 18 years old. What is your mobility or recovery plan when it comes to this stuff?
Yeah, so I follow a program that you can purchase. I'm not gonna say what it is because I'm not gonna promote it here. It's not something that I really want to do. But there's tons of different things out there that are either free and extremely accessible. If you have a smartphone, you can get on the internet and check out plenty of things that'll give you the ability to do yoga. But before I get into something, I normally roll, so I'll foam roll in the morning.
Nice.
And I follow this this foam rolling flow, if you want to call it that it smashes all the sore muscles in my legs, my upper body. I try to do a little bit of loosening in my upper body. warm up using some light weights, bands, and something that's going to get me a bit warmer, get my heart rate up, get me sweating a little bit.
And that only takes maybe 5-10 minutes or something like that.
5-10 minutes of rolling and warm up and that mobility work in the beginning. But you don't want to do a static hold before getting into a workout. You do static stretching afterwards.
So they say that, the difference between dynamic stretching, static stretching, and if you don't know out there, static stretching is holding a stretch for probably 30 seconds or longer, just a slow hold. And then dynamic is moving your muscles while stretching that muscle. They say that if you do static stretching before an exercise, you're losing up to 30% of your muscle capacity for the next 3 to 5 hours, which is pretty significant,
Yeah.
So you guys said, just like he said, 10 minutes of just taking the time to take care of yourself, warming up, getting this work in your muscles is going to pay dividends in the end.
And then you get in your workout, and when you're done with your workout, 15-20 minutes going through a nice little yoga style flow where you're holding the stretch between a minute and 5 minutes, depending upon what it is or what really needs it. And being able to get to a point where you're starting to render, and those the belly of the muscle is actually starting to give a little bit in your stretching. So that 2 to 5 minute time frame, holding it that entire time, it'll stretch out, and you'll be able to get to that deeper, like everybody calls it the plastic zone, where you're deforming the muscle, blah blah blah. You don't when you're holding these stretches, you don't want to hold them to a point where it hurts and you're deforming the muscle technically.
Okay. Yeah.
You want to hold it to an uncomfortable position, but you could go farther. And as you progress through the time, you're breathing through it, you're getting to a little bit more of an uncomfortable position, or as it gets more comfortable, you get uncomfortable slightly again.
Yeah.
And then your body naturally renders into that position because you're holding it over time.
Yeah, over time.
So so you end up getting in a deeper position. You don't ever want to overstretch so it's painful and you're deforming, like you're gonna damage the muscle a little bit when you stretch, but you don't literally want to damage the muscle every single day to a point where you're just like, I'm stretching as far as I can go. This is horrible, painful, and that's not something you want to do.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned before as well is he has a program that puts him through this little range of motion thing in the morning. That's 10 minutes. So if you guys are like, I don't really know what I'm doing, you don't really have to think. You just get a program online, it's free, or go on YouTube and just look up range of motion, workout of the day, whatever it may be.
Yeah, Taylor, did Taylor put something out?
Taylor Starch, you remember the nationwide Zoom that we did not too long ago? Just follow that. And like I said earlier, it's going to pay dividends.
Yep.
So moving on from that, one thing, again, is just your ability to stay in shape has to be hand in hand with your nutrition.
Oh, yeah.
If you could talk a few minutes on what your diet planners or what maybe their plan should be.
So it's relative to the goals you're going for, but like for you guys, just having a certain level of balance and being able to eat things. I wouldn't necessarily say time, because timing doesn't really make sense for what you're getting ready to do.
Yeah.
But having some kind of a balance. We'll put out something here before too long. The RDI, the registered dietitian up at USAFA, the Air Force Academy, she passed us a nice PowerPoint that we can put out and give to everybody. But it has the athlete plate. So if you've ever seen myplate.gov, there's a slight variance for the athlete plate, and it's a really good thing to take a look at. And it's really easy to take a look at and find. CSU actually built it, Colorado State University. So if you go out and Google that, the athlete plate, it's a good amount of information that tells you what your percentages should be.
Yeah.
If you're looking to cut, you're not necessarily losing a ton of calories. You're just shifting slightly, maybe a small reduction in carbohydrates and actually an increase a little bit in protein.
Yeah.
Just because you're going to have to recover a bit more.
And he's talking about macronutrients. If you guys don't know what macros, you guys just did that brief, carbs, fats, and proteins, and how your body works with those three things, those macros. You think about that, it's probably the best way to keep your muscle.
Oh, yeah.
And then also be able to lose fat at the same time, which is almost scientifically impossible, but that is the best way to do it, and that's tracking yourself. Like he was saying, is you eat how many calories, you do this for a couple weeks. If you're gaining weight, obviously you are above your calories, because how do you lose weight? You're in a caloric deficit.
Oh, yeah.
But while working out. So like you said, it depends on the athlete, how much cardio you're doing. If you're a runner all the time, you might not need to work on your run as much. You might need to gain a little muscle on your pull-ups, or maybe some grip strength or whatever. So you might change your macros depending on what you're doing.
Potentially, and depending upon your level of work, you're going to have to adjust, and your body's a little bit different. So if you notice what's going on with you, maybe you're losing mass but you're gaining strength, that's not really a bad thing. You don't necessarily want to be the heaviest guy like me at 180 pounds. I'm 5'7", 180 pounds. So moving my mass, being so short, is a more difficult thing to do. So I'm actually in a caloric deficit right now. I'm trying to reduce the amount of fat I have. I was building fat a little bit because my performance was at a point where I'm a lot better over distance with a little bit more fat, but I'm noticing now as I reduce the fat and just paying attention to the carbohydrate, fat, and protein intake, and instead of timing, I'm just doing balance, and I'm keeping that on a regular basis as I'm continuing on. So like the Ultra World Championships that I'm getting ready for, doing my nutrition plan for that, I find that when I keep balance throughout the entire duration of the event, I tend to perform better because I'm not having to reach back and go, oh man, I'm on a deficit with fat, I have a deficit with protein. I'm just maintaining that balance, and I'm fat adapted too. So being able to have a bit more of the protein and the fat in me at all times is going to help me out. So just literally eating a balanced diet helps me out. I tend to stay somewhere around the 40% carbohydrate, 30% protein, 30% fat, and that keeps me a lot better. And
that's a pretty safe macro
for me.
For you.
Yeah, for me, and depending upon what the phase is. So if I, like right now, this week has been kind of light, so I'm down around like 2,700 calories. But when I amplify the next week and I go back and I'm doing the double or triple or quadruple incline, it's going to end up being somewhere more around like that 4,000-ish calorie space. So, and I adjust the macros as well, because depending upon my protein needs, so that 1.7-ish, that 1.7-ish is what I'm trying to hit with my proteins, 1.7 per kilogram.
Yeah. So that's for him, and it takes some time. You know, it just takes a little bit of time to figure out what macros you're going to use. As we know, as you're preparing for BMT and the special warfare pipeline, combat stuff, or whatever it may be, you have to figure that out, and you got to cater to passing that IFT. A lot of guys are like, I got to prepare for this super heavy weight because I know I'm going to be carrying this weight, but it's like, hey guys, if you're not passing the IFT, if you can't do endurance push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, swim, and run, like, you might have to shift that, because I'll tell you, once you pass the IFT, once you get into basic, or you get the SWIC, Special Warfare Canada course, you're going to start jacking some steel. They're going to get you strong. The pipeline is going to get you strong. And I'll tell you, I went through Indoc at 130 pounds. I left, put my beret on at about 155, and I was not overweight. I was in pretty good position to pick up some heavy weight. And that originally, that first, pass test IFT was me trying to get some endurance. So,
and so one of the biggest things is when you think about it like this, professional athletes work their base first. And if you think the strongest thing you have in wrestling, we'll go back to wrestling, the strongest thing you have in wrestling is your base. And if you have a weak base, so you have a small pyramid base, but you try to build the middle, it's going to be imbalanced. So you have to build that base first, and going back and doing the body weight, getting good form, running, and getting that volume before you start doing other things like rucking. Building your base and then moving upward is going to be the smart thing to do. You're never going to be good with a short, with that small bottom of your pyramid. If your base is weak, then your overall game is going to be weak.
100%. So moving on from that, is just we're trying to go in some blocks here. Let's talk about what you think guys should do to prepare for this, and not only just through fitness. We talked about that. Your mobility, your nutrition. We talk about social, and just before we let them talk on this, we're here at the CrossFit Games, guys. We have this this pull-up bar over here, and usually we go around to places that aren't fitness surrounded, and we're like, hey, if you can do 5 pull-ups, you get a shirt. And sometimes you won't even get people getting all the shirts. Out
Nobody
here,
gets a shirt at 5.
everyone is like, hey,
15,
if you
20.
do 15 pull-ups, 20 pull-ups, you get a shirt, and a lot of people doing that. So I want to bring that up, is like, get in the groups that are keeping you motivated, like-minded guys. Like, we're just motivated. Everyone out here is motivated to work out. If you can get with the group pre-session to work out, which not just once a week or once every 2 weeks, start to get to know and build connections to go work out in a group, man, like it's just this rolling ball.
And it's nice too. I push guys to go do things socially. So if you think the different pillars that we push, the physical, spiritual, mental, and social, and that social pillar is huge. Like you were saying, you go out, and I push guys to go out and do things like go camping on the weekends, hang out, go to competitions. The guys that come out with me, I try to push them to do Spartans when they're in town, or I'll go out to different areas and I'll bring out guys that are in the different depths, and I'll give them opportunities to go volunteer.
And you're basically putting them into an environment.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I get them to do a Spartan for free, and the group comes out. They'll volunteer in that environment, seeing all the people doing the Spartans, and then they themselves get to run that Spartan for free.
Yeah.
Or DECA. Like DECA's another one where you can go out and you can volunteer and you can do that event for free. And I've taken guys out to do DECA. I've taken guys out to do Spartans, and it's a phenomenal time. And just being able to look back on that experience with that team and say, hey man, you remember when you dropped the weight, or hey, you remember when that mud splashed you in your mouth and you threw up? That was hilarious. Yeah. So when you're in SWIC, or you're going through ENS or EOD school, and you're like, hey man, I know you're having a hard time, but you remember when you remember when that stuff got in your mouth?
You remember when you pooped your pants?
You remember when you pooped your pants
on that 10-mile rush or whatever?
You still ended up finishing, didn't you?
Yeah, you pooped your pants at 5 Mile and you finished at 10.
You finished that. So I mean, there's no difference than pooping your pants.
That's even worse than what's happening right now.
Because you smelled nasty and your butt hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
You got a rash. You had a rash for 2 weeks after that.
Yeah, and that's another thing. We love just the camaraderie, the teamwork that we have. And if you might be in the environment where you go back home and people might not want you to progress in life, people might be bringing you down, and that happens across the nation. And what this is going to do for you is get you out of the environment. Yeah. He's bringing these kids to Spartan Races and different team mentality events, and you start to become that person that you want to be. Yep. So that's great, man. That's awesome.
I mean, you think about it like this: lions hang out with lions, sheep hang out with sheep. Yeah. So if you're wanting to be more like a lion, hang out with lions. Who is it? So Maxwell, and I
John Maxwell?
Yeah, I don't necessarily like quoting John Maxwell,
okay.
But what he likes to do and what he pushes is to be surrounded by people that are successful. You want to surround yourself with 10s, so that you yourself can be brought up to be a 10. You want to have people that elevate you. If you can provide that to somebody else and you can elevate that person, that's good too. He talks about a lot of good stuff, and there's a lot of good behind it. Somebody who does that, or who did that really well, was President Trump. President Trump surrounds himself with people that do really good things around him.
You can't fly with the eagles if you're hanging out with the chickens.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
what I mean? Yeah.
So surrounding yourself with people that bring you up, that elevate you, is great. And even sometimes you have to reach down and grab somebody who could be an eagle. That's the kind of person that you want to grab onto. The way I like to talk about it is in terms of luggage. So you have sensitive items, and then you have empty luggage, and then you have things that are like toiletries and clothing and things like that. The sensitive items, those are your NVGs, your night vision goggles. That's your armor, stuff you can't operate without. I need my I need my hook and line kit. I absolutely need my mine detector. So I absolutely need to bring that along. So somebody who has the sensitive items there, who is that mine detector, sometimes I need to grab their hand and pull them along, because I know they're sensitive items. I know that person has something inside of them, and they just need a little bit of a push. Maybe their home environment is either extremely negative or extremely positive. Maybe they're constantly being told, "Oh, you're perfect," and they believe it, but they're not working to their potential. or they're constantly
Oh, like
told
they almost stalemate because everyone's calling them,
Yeah.
"Yeah, you're great," and then you pull that person out of
yeah.
that small little bubble,
Yep.
and then over here they got 20 guys who are just as great or more,
they're better.
and it's almost opposite too,
Yeah.
or people call you stupid your whole life, and that,
Yeah.
that happens. Like you might have this environment you're in where people are like, "Yeah, you're an idiot," and then
Yeah.
you start to believe, "Man, I'm an idiot." And
it's-
that's what's great about these curve fields. We'll pull you out of that. We're going to put you in an environment, test you, push you to your limit, and we're going to see what you're really capable of. And you'd be really surprised what you truly are capable of.
And it's sometimes just breaking from that environment is going to be key to your success. So if you're in an area, or a community that is just bagging on you and trying to hold you down and keep you from getting out and doing something successful because you're not going to be better than them, you'll never be better than them. Don't be around people like that. That's not healthy environment, you know.
Yeah,
and
it's
it's
really
not
not.
it's not something that you should do. There's something to be said for somebody who talks about people and like success. Success, you can look at successful people and see what they talk about. They talk about things. They talk about the way somebody was doing something, and they learn from somebody else's success, and they're able to pull that in and do that. And it's more action. It's more something that may not necessarily be tangible, but it's actionable. And then people who are not successful talk about people. They talk smack, and they're constantly bagging on people.
Almost
and
trying
they're
to bring them down
and
to
that,
their
and that's
level, yeah.
and then it brings them down to where they feel they're above that person because
Yeah.
they themselves don't feel they can get to that place, which that's not true. You put in the work, you're going to be able to get to that place. Move out of that environment. Talk about things that are going to make you better. Talk about things that people are doing that are awesome, and see what they do and try to emulate that. Get to that point. That's how you become successful. So get out of that environment.
Yeah. And to piggyback what he's saying, one thing we usually get from people is they believe that in the military, you're doing 20 years of just straight operating. All you do is get shot at and this and that. So here's an example of that passing on, to the next generation. Everything you've learned. This is a perfect example. What him and I are doing right now is that we operated for a long time, and we said, hey, let's give back to the community. We came into the scout role as a recruiter, and we're trying to find the right person. And here we are talking about what's the next move for you guys, and then you guys will be in our position. So the Air Force is not all about just grinding and getting shot at overseas and messing with bombs and skydiving and getting hurt. It's none of that. After a little while, if you don't want it to be, you can give back like we are now. So here we are at the CrossFit Games, living the dream for free. The Air Force is paying for this,
Yeah.
and so it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's super nice, and the support you get for your family and things you get for yourself. So being able to like no questions asked. My wife was pregnant; she was getting ready to give birth, and I was able to just leave. And that was it.
Yeah, it was just the command was like, yeah, absolutely,
Everything was
priority.
ready, and to the point where everybody knew that if she goes into labor, I get a call. I was able to just book it, and I'd be out for a little while, not doing anything. And then the same thing happened on the second birth, my second daughter, and being able to just at a moment's notice go out. The rest of the team was able to take it over because I'm not special. There's nothing special about me compared to anybody else, and there shouldn't be. If you leave somewhere, you should do a good enough job so that when you leave, there should be no felt loss. I mean, the only thing should be like people miss you because of your personality.
Sure.
People don't miss you because you leave a hole. Like, that's just, if you leave a hole, that's something wrong.
And yeah, that's a great point. Is that your whole team are great. Like you can rely on every single person in your team in these career fields. We are trained enough to be able to cover for a guy, and like you said, in these career fields, it's great. You say you have a family problem, they're gonna put you first. The person is priority. So, man, that's great to hear. So here we are again, like I said, at the CrossFit Games, living the dream. We've talked through this podcast from your job, your family life, Spartan life, what puts you through the grind, what keeps you on the grind. Again, he's 40 years old. He'll probably out PT you, and how does he do it? He talked about pre-session stuff of what you guys need to do to prepare, from nutrition to mobility to fitness, getting on a program, talking about what the Air Force does to you and family. We have talked about a lot of stuff in the last hour plus.